Double check. All right, welcome to the Grand Solar Minimum. We are live. Good stuff. All right. Pardon me. So today is Sunday, November 5th. Hopefully everyone is dry and safe. We have had quite the soaker here in Western New York, as most of you may know. We are in Buffalo, New York. Excuse me. But I want to wander over to spaceweather.com real fast before we get into the regional radar. It's been a while since we've updated anything about solar conditions or even talked about it. And I just wanted to point out, this has been the norm here. The solar wind speeds have been between about this number here in the low 400s. No sunspots for 4 straight days now. So that's 72 now for the month or for the year of 2017. This coronal hole here that we're going to see in the SDO, we're going to see some effects from that tomorrow, G1. So nothing real dramatic here. G1 class is pretty mild, 500 to 600 kilometers per second solar wind speed. Right now the density is 2.1, so very thin. But that is our current conditions for now. KP indices are at 0, and of course the only coronal hole which we just talked about, we will see effects from that. Actually, it's saying here on the 7th of November and the 8th, not the 6th. So with that, I want to cruise over here to the radar, and this is where I'm bringing in Mari with me as well. Mari's lived here in Buffalo. How long you lived up here?
Oh, on and off for several decades.
So every time we get a big rain event, which it seems like since this summer around June, almost like clockwork, on a Thursday, we start getting 2-inch rainstorms or whatever. But each time I hear Mari say these creeks are getting higher and higher, I've never seen them this high. And what did we see that normally we don't see in November in this area, this part of New York?
Well, this year we've had an incredible amount of rain. I've been concerned about the surrounding creeks and rivers going into winter because they're at a high level. Currently, we're under a flood alert with the rain right now. The nearest creek right now is 10 to 11 feet high right
12.
now above.
Well, they're forecasting for at least 11-1 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And sorry about that, folks. 11-1 tomorrow, and as high as 12.
Yeah, so our creeks and rivers being this high this time of year, pretty much all flood conditions in November is very concerning to me because right now I'm wondering, where's the water going to go? Buffalo's known for some very harsh winters, some very huge lake effect snows, and it seems every time we have a harsh winter, most winters when there's snow melt, our creeks and rivers also have pretty crazy flood conditions every year. And my concern is with how the creeks and rivers are already as high as can be right now, flooding people's houses and streets and parks and all that right now. If this water doesn't go down and we're going into winter with ice and snow, we're going to have some major flooding problems, like severe major problems, like we haven't seen here, like from just my recollections, or I can't even talk right now, but from the history of me being here, I don't recall anything like that. So, come springtime, we could be 20 feet water.
Well,
it's a little concerning.
It will recede, but the question is how many more storm systems do we have coming through? This has been something common here in Western New York. We seem to get these soaker storms, and looking out the window right now, and it's 4:31, guys. It's dark outside. I mean, it feels like the sun's already setting right now, and I know we're getting close. Oh, clocks did go back an hour, didn't we?
Was it
So
today or tomorrow? 2
I
o'clock.
thought it was 2 o'clock Sunday morning.
So are we already? See, I didn't
I
even
guess
feel
so.
that. That was painless.
So there you go. Well, we got that extra hour.
That
So
was good.
now I don't feel bad for waking up at 7:44. Technically, it was 8:44. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, no, look at the moisture that's heading into the Buffalo area. Right now, we're going to be in a lull for about, it looks like a good 45 minutes to an hour. And then um, right off of not even that long, folks. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get confused where we are Buffalo wise. We're actually getting ready to get into the heavier rain. Go ahead and here I can zoom in on this real quick. Sorry, this is what happens. I should have had it zoomed in already. Anywho, so there we are, Buffalo, and that is just the beginning of what's coming.
I should go take some pictures
And,
of the creek.
well, and we drove by on the way home from breakfast this morning. We have a tradition. We go get breakfast and we drive around and just take a look at, we've been trying to get some fall colors this year, but the way the weather changed here, it was so quick. Leaves are falling off faster than we can enjoy the color change. So, but anyway, this morning it was more or less we took an extra route home just to watch the levels at a creek that is near our one of our parks, which is less than 12 blocks away, and the waters were really high. And there was another bridge that we crossed on before that, and the river looked like it was chocolate milk, and that's a good sign of how fast the water's going. They're churning up mud, so you got that that chocolate milk looking like color to the water. So they were moving, and it's just kind of worrisome. We've had minor flooding issues with our own basement, and these are just from the 1 to 2 inch rainstorms with the creeks as high as they are, and they are definitely calling for flood. And the thing that's a little unnerving, and I wonder if we can zoom in a little bit more and try to give a little bit idea here.
I could probably pull up a different site with flood maps.
I tried to zoom in all the way, but this is as far as it's going to let me. But Mari, I think we're probably somewhere in this vicinity. Is that correct? Somewhere in here where my cursor is. I know you guys can't see it, but I'm pointing just the southeast area of Buffalo. So we're right off the lake, and like I said, we're going to be experiencing.
That's something, the few decades I've lived here in Buffalo, we've always had lake effect snow in the wintertime. That's a normal, type of terminology. But now we're starting to hear lake effect rain.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is
that was Halloween.
Not common.
That was Halloween. We had and that's the thing, guys. We just had a storm here in Buffalo that dropped a lot of rain, and then the next day we got a slushy like snow, and it coated the grass, it coated our parking lot, but the streets were not covered whatsoever. Sidewalks, in some residential areas, it might have put a light coating on the grass, but that's it. And I'm gonna go to that in a minute, but I was looking at some comments in the chat, and they were talking about Lost Horizon, aka Debbie. She said she's in the Michigan area, and the thunder is just some sounds that she's never heard before, like the way it's ground shaking thunder.
Is it from this storm?
Yeah, it's from this right here.
Yeah.
So she already experienced this. Let's see if I can zoom this out a little bit more. Zoom out the region here. Yeah, so they've already had the storms. This right here. So hearing that, and it looks to me like it's intensified. There's warm air coming from the south here right now, and this is behind another cold front. Tomorrow, I know in this part of the country, we are looking at some pretty decent temperatures once again. Nothing. Actually, we are kind of going to be a little mild for this time of year. November 6th, I think we're going to be at a high around 60, but I think the temperature is going to drop. Like I said, we are looking at a cold front that's coming behind this storm right now. This is a current radar map, so here is another blast of cold air, And as you can see, look how far south this is going, and it keeps getting further and further south. I heard a gentleman talk about how hot it was in Texas, and he kind of chuckled. You know, if our fronts are dropping like right here already this time of the year, I can't wait to see what January is going to bring. He might even see some snowfall this winter. This cold front, every time we get a blast from Canada, you know, it seems like this front continues to stretch out as far south as it possibly can. So that's going to be early next week into late week. Who's that?
I don't know. I don't know. It's sort of like if I don't know a name, that sort of freaks me out. So
yeah,
it's just like, okay,
it's different. Sorry, whoever that was anyway. But anyway, another thing I wanted to cruise over to is Dr. Roy Spencer. Now, global warming, he is keeping track of is global warming man-made, and from what I understand, Roy Spencer he's not on board with global warming or global cooling. His whole point of his research, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mari, but it's because he's trying to prove that climate change is not man-made. That
That's
CO2
exactly what it is.
Right, CO2 does not change the climate.
He's very adamant that any warming is not man-made. He's a proponent of natural, climate
cycles,
change, natural cycles. So that's why we follow him.
I started following him earlier this summer, and back when I think Adapt 2030 did a small video about the anomaly here. Now this is in Celsius, so the anomaly. Well, thank you, Mari. Back in June was sitting at a 0.21, which was kind of low, but we had a late. I thought anyway. We saw some late winter action. I know temperatures here in the Northeast, North America here, we didn't get into normal temps until second week of June. I mean, we were in the 50s all May, 40s, so it was chilly.
Bipolar.
So to see the temperature anomaly at a 0.21, and then July it jumped up to a plus 0.29, and then I think August was a 0.4 something. I could look it up here real quick. It's not that hard, but this one's not the sliding one. But I know September, the reading for September was 0.54, and then just a couple days ago they released the numbers. The October is 0.63. Just watching the trend, I had actually predicted a plus 0.61. I was off by 0.2, so I'm kind of proud that I was able to kind of see a pattern. But the thing that's going to be deceiving is not to get too excited about, is that we are going to see a cooler reading in November, in my opinion, just based on this chart here. And also it's November. We already know that there is extreme cold right now in northern and central Canada, and also in northern Europe. They're getting a cold blast. I think China is getting some pretty cold weather right now as well. And of course, the United States, I just showed where we're going to see some colder air moving into the region by midweek. If not, the entire eastern part and Midwest will be a lot cooler. I know they're calling for temperatures in the 40s here, so colder in the Midwest and the northern plains. I saw some spots not even warming up past 25 degrees. That's just a little chilly there for early November, in my opinion, especially as how warm as it's been. We broke a lot of heat records, I think, this year. There were a lot of warm records that were also broken, not just cold records. So it's, to see it come from like this summer, it stayed kind of average around here, but I know some spots in the United States, they were some extreme 90s and 100s for the most part of the summer. So for them to see the weather just from all of a sudden from, 80s, 90s and just snap into where we are right now, it's just a sharp decline, which kind of, correlates with what we're looking at on most of these graphs, is that the grand solar minimum that we are heading into is a steep hill and will continue to trend downward. Now, I bring this up because I was looking around at some websites today, and I had seen it on Twitter at first, and the headline, of course, has got to be it's got to be sensationalized, like always. But what it comes down to is that Trump has now debunked his own theory that climate change is not man-made. This report is saying that humans are responsible for 93 to 123% Earth's net global warming after 1950. This report goes on to show a strong answer for climate science than denying politicians. Now, the problem with that statement is that the politicians that are against global warming have nothing to gain from this. In fact, the global warming crowd, the tax, they're the ones that are making money because of the global warming theory. So, if anything, these Democrats and the left is scared to death that if too much information gets out about the grand solar minimum and what the possibilities of a cooling effect from that, not just from TSI decrease, but look at all the volcanoes that we have getting ready to erupt. We all know that also associates with grand solar minimum and cooling. More cloud coverage we have also will be deflecting any TSI and any kind of warming that could possibly happen. But the reason why I'm showing this story here, what really upsets me is the extent this article goes through to basically what we're looking at here. This is the one that really kind of upsets me a lot. The sea rise, that the fact that it keeps rising and that it's going to be up 10 feet by 2100, that the sea level rise will be it's going to go up, it's going to continue to get higher, and that our temperatures from here on out are going to continue to rise. We're going to get much warmer. It's right here. I apologize. The temperature thing really upset me, where it told us here that we are going to continue to get warmer, not cooler. So I wonder what their answers are going to be when they see the harsh winters this year. Now, this is only the beginning of the grand solar minimum, so a lot is still on the table. Cycle 25 starts in 2019, and that's where a lot of folks that study this grand solar minimum really believe that we will see things accelerate as far as conditions. Some of these wild storms we're having right now, from what I'm being told, these are just appetizers compared to what we're going to see during the peak of a grand solar minimum. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that if the data that we get, that we see, continues to come in the way it's coming in, I'm just trying to figure out what's the government, what's the mainstream media and weather scientists going to tell people when it's the total opposite of a warm up. Mari, do you have any thoughts about? And this is on weatherchannel.com. They're basically saying this report is coming from the White House, and that basically that we did create global warming.
Well, I haven't had a chance to look it over. I, just the fact it's coming out of the White House and it has that stamp of being political on it, I'm a fence sitter, and I sit and observe, and I just think, I just don't trust our government to put out anything. I mean, it's very hypocritical what they're doing with this paper versus what he did with the Paris Agreement and all that. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. I just think a lot of this is to spin things and to confuse people so people just don't know what to think. And the tricky part is what we do here is try to gather as much data as we can and piece the data together. And what we find here when we dig through stuff, we find a lot of faulty charts, altered charts. It appears that both sides try to do, I don't know, they manipulate their own reality on either side. So it's really hard to get true answers and research without really taking loads of time and analyzing the data yourself. You can't really trust anything you see out there. Like this picture, sort of. You know, I'm trying to research this picture on Instagram. They're saying that this was Buffalo on Halloween. Now, we live in Buffalo, and there was no way this was in Buffalo, this picture.
No. I work outside of Buffalo. My drive from Buffalo, we did not have anything like this on the ground. Now, they were calling for areas south of Buffalo, like Jamestown.
It might be a southern, you know.
And Jamestown's what? That's 100 miles
Buffalo,
away, right?
Yeah, usually southern Buffalo gets hit harder, the higher elevations, but this is not Buffalo, New York. I don't know anywhere in Buffalo that got this kind of cold. And we're right in the heart of Buffalo, and we, on Halloween, we had more flash floods than anything.
Yeah.
It wasn't cold
There
enough.
was a lot of water.
I thought I was hoping it would get cold because I wanted a huge snowstorm in October. Just
sure.
Fun.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that. And the kids were trick-or-treating probably by the time we got home. I mean, it was drizzling, but it wasn't even that cold out. In the end of Halloween, I mean, it was cold, but it was more like a damp cold. It wasn't certainly not snow weather.
It was a raw, nasty day. I'll tell you that. It was a raw, nasty day, and I'm glad we took our kids trick or treating in one of the malls.
We didn't get enough to coat like that.
Yeah, back to this picture. And now I'm not gonna sit here and criticize the YouTube channel that I pulled this off of, but he put this out as an example of, the eastern part of the United States that got snow on this particular date. And I just wish that, some of these channels would pump the brakes a little bit on some of their info and vet it. Here at the Grand Solar Minimum, we have done a lot of research. You have to vet a lot of information. And right now we're going through that process again. But this was a huge example of, this is a channel that I trust, but yet when I saw this picture, I knew right away that this was false, this was misleading, and now I start to look at this channel a little differently, and the writings on the wall, and some of these channels out here are just out there to, let's just say, clickbait, and there is an agenda. Some of these folks are trying to spread the message to make a buck, and hey, that's fine. At least they're getting the message out, but I wish they wouldn't be so gloomy and doomy and misleading for it, because it's already hard enough to try to educate people about what the Grand Solar Minimum is and how it works. There's a lot to it. And I think Mari and I are learning that we have to spread out and find different people from different sides to help decipher this. It can't be just the same constant source. It has to come from various, like Valentina Zarkova. She believes in the dynamo theory. That's something that Mari and I would like to research. I've always been into the electric universe, but there is an alternative possibly that could fix that wedge between your traditionalist and people who are electric universe. Maybe there's something to the what was I saying?
Just the bridge between.
Yeah, between the global war.
You want me to hide the chat so you don't get distracted?
Yeah, I might as well. You got the chat, I guess.
Yeah, I'll pay attention to the chat. That way
it always throws me off. So anyway, basically, just want to say, everybody, please be careful when you're watching channels, even ones that you trust. Vet your own information. Part of YouTube is, I think, is critical thinking. And with that being said, when you watch something on YouTube, you have to go through a series of vetting yourself, unfortunately, because anybody can post on any channel and say anything. You don't have to be licensed to do that here. So just make sure that when you're getting information, just make sure that you're vetting it properly. And because the last thing I want to do is mislead anybody about what's going on. And that's kind of the reason why, I think that it's safe for a channel that's called the Grand Solar Minimum to cover the Grand Solar Minimum as it happens and keep track of certain events, geomagnetic storms, solar winds, coronal holes, sunspots, and extreme weather. We believe that TSI does drive the climate. We believe that the cosmic rays are seeding clouds in our atmosphere, and it is creating more cloud coverage. So, we are firm believers of the science of the Grand Solar Minimum, and we are firm believers of what can result from these. And right now, I think it's pretty much we're in that sit back and watch mode. Be prepared as well. The folks that understand what we're trying to convey here need to be ready for worse winter, like more storms, more heavier snows. I'm not saying it's going to be like this all year round. I'm saying as the years go by, we will notice harsher winters. We will notice bigger rains, more flooding. Again, I'm not suggesting we're going to be wiped off the planet, but as the years go by towards cycle 25 and the decrease in solar activity, we're going to really start seeing this thing swing into gear. Right now is just the beginning. And I believe, Mari believes, that we're going to see this start as a regional thing, that we're going to have areas that's going to have extreme heat, and then we're going to have areas that's going to have extreme cold. There is not going to be a balance. This is all about instability right now. Our climate, our jet stream is changing rapidly. And, there's people out there who have it halfway right and have the other half a little wrong. Mr. The Beckwith guy, I enjoyed his jet stream education, and what it teaches me is that the way the jet streams are flowing right now is going to mess with the integrity of the seasons. That's the one thing that he's telling the truth about. But when I watch some of his videos and he talks about how the salt from the water is melting the icebergs in the Arctic, and we are losing ice in the Arctic, it upsets me to see people just blatantly lying like that. And again, that's why I say you can say and do whatever you want on YouTube. These people don't have to be licensed. So we've always encouraged your own research here on the Grand Solar Minimum. We're going to continue to encourage that. Mari and I, we're going to try to do a little bit more updates for this channel. Actually, we're going to call them recaps, I think is what they're going to call them.
We have to structure the time so we have more consistency with, schedules and getting the information out in a timely manner. Right now, our schedules have been very hectic, and we're coming up with a schedule to be able to put more content out in a more timely, scheduled manner, so you guys know when to expect
routine
the content for you guys.
And we just want to educate more. We want to learn too, and we've got a ton of information in the first. Well, we started this channel back in January, so the first 10 months of this channel, we've learned so much, and we're going to continue to learn, but also learning from that point to where we are now. It's also easier to debunk people who might be trying to sensationalize, and we just want people to know that Grand Solar Minimum's not. We're not about sensationalizing anything. The facts for themselves speak volumes. We don't have to put fancy music or doomy titles to get attention. Again, once you hear about the storm we're covering about, most of the time, if we're covering a big storm, it's making headlines, national headlines, and there's a reason for it. So I don't have anything else to say. Mari, did you want to add anything? I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about.
Not really. Just this is a good little touch base to say hello. We're still around. We've been busy, and we're reorganizing.
And retooling. And we're going to come up with some interesting. I want to get more interactive with our live chat. I'd like to see more friendlier debates, not arguments about certain theories. Like I said earlier, the dynamo theory, the electric theory. I'd like to have more guests that are in tune with that. And just, a lot more education. And we want to report this as it happens. So, that being said, guys, be safe out there and we'll talk soon. This coronal hole here that we're going to see in the SDO. We're going to see some effects from that tomorrow, G1. So nothing real dramatic here. G1 class is pretty mild, 500 to 600 kilometers per second solar wind speed. Right now the density is 2.1, so very thin. But that is our current conditions for now. KP indices are at 0, and of course, the only coronal hole, which we just talked about, we will see effects from that. Actually, it's saying here on the 7th of November and the 8th, not the 6th. So with that, I want to cruise over here to the radar, and this is where I'm bringing in Mari with me as well. Mari's lived here in Buffalo. How long you lived up here?
Oh, on and off for several decades.
So every time we get a big rain event, which it seems like since this summer around June, almost like clockwork, on a Thursday, we start getting, it's dark outside. I mean, it feels like the sun's already setting right now, and I know we're getting close. Oh, clocks did go back an hour, didn't we?
Was it today or tomorrow? 2 o'clock.
I thought it was 2 o'clock Sunday morning.
So are we already? See, I didn't even feel that. That was painless.
So there you go. Well, we got that extra hour.
That was good.
Now I don't feel bad for waking up at 7:44. Technically, it was 8:44. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, no, look at the moisture that's heading into the Buffalo area. Right now, we're going to be in a lull for about, it looks like a good 45 minutes to an hour. And then right off of not even that long, folks. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get confused where we are Buffalo-wise. We're actually getting ready to get into the heavier rain. Go ahead and, here I can zoom in on this real quick. Sorry. This is what happens. I should have had it zoomed in already. Anywho. So there we are, Buffalo. And that is just the beginning of what's coming.
I should go take some pictures of the creek.
Well, and we drove by on the way home from breakfast this morning. Double check. All right, welcome to the Grand Solar Minimum. We are live. Good stuff. All right. Pardon me. So today is Sunday, November 5th. Hopefully everyone is dry and safe. We have had quite the soaker here in western New York, as most of you may know. We are in Buffalo, New York. Excuse me. But I want to wander over to spaceweather.com real fast before we get into the regional radar. It's been a while since we've updated anything about solar conditions or even talked about it. And I just wanted to point out, this has been the norm here. The solar wind speeds have been between about this number here in the low 400s. No sunspots for 4 straight days now. So that's 72 now for the month or for the year of 2017.
Huge lake effect snows. And it seems every time we have a harsh winter, most winters when there's snow melt, our creeks and rivers also have pretty crazy flood conditions every year. And my concern is with how the creeks and rivers are already as high as can be right now, flooding people's houses and streets and parks and all that right now. If this water doesn't go down and we're going into winter with ice and snow, we're going to have some major flooding problems, like severe major problems, like we haven't seen here, like from just my recollections, or I can't even talk right now, but from the history of me being here, I don't recall anything like that. So, come springtime, we could be 20 feet water.
Well,
It's
and
a little concerning.
it will recede, but the question is how many more storm systems do we have coming through? This has been something common here in Western New York. We seem to get these soaker storms, and looking out the window right now, and it's 4:31, guys. 2-inch rainstorms or whatever. But each time I hear Mari say these creeks are getting higher and higher, I've never seen them this high. And what did we see that normally we don't see in November in this area, this part of New York?
Well, this year we've had an incredible amount of rain. I've been concerned about the surrounding creeks and rivers going into winter because they're at a high level. Currently, we're under a flood alert with the rain right now. The nearest creek right now is uh, 10 to 11 feet high right
12,
now
12.
above.
Well, they're forecasting for at least 11-1 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And sorry about that, folks. 11-1
So
tomorrow, and as high as 12.
yeah, so our creeks and rivers being this high this time of year, pretty much uh, all flood conditions in November is very concerning to me because right now I'm wondering where's the water going to go? Buffalo's known for some very harsh winters, some very huge